The challenge that should never have been made. The Grand Council of the Galactic Dominion had witnessed wars that reshaped civilizations, alliances that spanned millennia, and betrayals that toppled empires. It had seen planetary rulers beg for mercy, warlords pledge allegiance to the greater good, and ancient species fade into obscurity. But never, not once in the entire history of the Dominion, had it witnessed something as stupidly reckless as what was about to unfold. The council chamber was a vast amphitheater of alien power, a colossal dome stretching miles wide, lined with shimmering banners of 1,000 species. Representatives from every corner of the galaxy gathered there, their forms varying from glowing gelatinous intellects to hardened, kitten-plated warriors. A perpetual storm of diplomatic tension loomed over the chamber, until the doors slammed open with the force of a collapsing star. The chamber fell into absolute silence. Even the telepathic species, who never truly stopped chattering among themselves, went completely still. At the entrance stood Kor'geth the Unyielding, warlord of the Drak'Thal Dominion, champion of 1,000 battles, scourge of the Outer Rim, and a walking nightmare in the eyes of every species present. His titanic frame, nearly 4 meters of pure muscle and kitten-plated war armor, radiated a presence so overwhelming that even the battle-hardened generals among the council lowered their gaze. His kind had conquered entire solar systems, had faced the most hostile life forms in the universe, and emerged victorious every single time. Every species knew what came next. The Drak'Thal never entered the council chamber unless it was to declare war. A soft clicking sound broke the silence as one of the Uloi delegates, a frail, 6-limbed creature covered in bioluminescent tendrils, began whispering in their native tongue. It sounded suspiciously like a funeral prayer. Even the galactic AI overseer, which had monitored political affairs for the last 20,000 cycles, hesitated in its calculations. Kor'geth took a single step forward, his heavy, clawed foot cracking the obsidian floor beneath him. Then came the words that changed everything. "I challenge the human." A collective gasp shook the chamber. One diplomat dropped a data slate. The sharp sound echoed like a gunshot. Several council members turned toward the Terran delegation, their faces shifting between horror and disbelief. At the center of it all, Nathan Cole, the human ambassador, blinked. His expression was a perfect mix of mild confusion and absolute indifference, which only made the situation worse. He had, until this moment, been stirring his coffee. Now he stared at the towering warlord as if someone had just interrupted his breakfast to ask if he had time for an intergalactic execution. "Ha!" Kor'geth's deep, rumbling growl resonated through the hall. "I challenge you, human, to single combat." Silence. Pure, unfiltered dread washed over the chamber. The Uloi diplomat curled into a defensive ball of shimmering tentacles, whimpering in distress. A auxiliary council member, whose species had 3 distinct stages of aging, visibly transitioned into their elderly form on the spot. Even the Drak'Thal Warlords, a species known for relishing combat, looked concerned, because they all knew what this meant. A Drak'Thal combat challenge was sacred. Once issued, it could not be withdrawn. And worse still, there was no precedent for a challenger surviving it. The council had witnessed entire planetary champions obliterated within minutes of facing the Drak'Thal in the arena. Cybernetic warlords, apex predators, genetically enhanced warriors, all had been reduced to smoldering wreckage against the sheer primal savagery of the Drak'Thal. And now, a human was being challenged. The same species that the rest of the Dominion barely acknowledged. The species that had only recently achieved interstellar travel. The species that, to most of the galactic community, were nothing more than stubborn primitives from an overgrown death world. A species that had no chance of surviving. Ambassador Nathan Cole took a slow sip of his coffee. Set it down. And then, in the most horrifying display of human recklessness imaginable, he shrugged. "What's in it for me?" The chamber collectively imploded. Somewhere, A Eloy priest fainted. The galactic overseer's display flickered with a system error. The Trask ambassador, who had previously been writing their will, looked up in disbelief. Even Korgeth paused. For one full second, the Drak'Thal Warlord, a being who had crushed war fleets and torn apart mechs with his bare hands, did not know how to respond. Cole leaned back in his chair, stretching. "I mean, you bust in here, smash the floor, declare some honor-bound duel. Kinda dramatic, don't you think?" The warlord's claws twitched. A single misstep in this moment would lead to war. Cole took another sip of coffee, exhaling. "So, let's make it interesting. If I win, the Terran Alliance gets free trading rights in Drak'Thal-controlled space for, let's say, 5 years." The chamber exploded in protests. The human thinks he can negotiate. He thinks he can win. A Trask diplomat choked on their own appendages. Korgath's mandibles clicked in something that almost resembled amusement. "And if you lose?" Cole thought about it for a second, then nodded. "You can have my coffee." Virex, the chief scientist of the Dominion, felt a migraine forming. Cole gestured to his mug. "But, just so you know, it's fresh ground earth coffee. Very rare, worth at least a solar fleet on the black market." Korgath stared. Then, in a deep guttural growl, he laughed. A full, booming, terrifying Drak'Thal laugh. The chamber froze. Then the warlord slammed his fist into his chest plate. "So be it, human." He turned and stormed toward the exit. Cole stretched, exhaling slowly. The moment the doors shut behind Korgath, chaos erupted. "You idiot." Cole was suddenly surrounded by council members, diplomats, and panicked political advisors. "You just signed your own death warrant. Do you even know who you hate? AK, TKAL, combat chi. LDNG is." Cole finished his coffee. Then, with the calm indifference of a man who had survived far worse things, he grinned. "Yeah, and that big guy. He's already lost." Virex stared in horror. The human wasn't afraid. He was excited. And for the first time in his life, Virex realized the galaxy had no idea what it had just unleashed. The Warlord versus the Deathworlder. The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Dominion had never been so close to a collective aneurysm. Delegates from every major species, scholars, generals, diplomats, had spent centuries carefully navigating the fragile politics of interstellar diplomacy. Entire wars had been prevented through meticulous negotiations, backroom deals, and painstakingly worded treaties. Yet, in the span of a single conversation, the human ambassador had just accepted a combat challenge from the most lethal species in the known galaxy. Worse still, he looked like he was enjoying himself. The council loses its mind. The moment Korgath, the unyielding, stormed out of the chamber, the room exploded into chaos. The Eloy diplomats, who were naturally prone to stress-induced paralysis, had curled into fetal positions, whimpering prayers to their ancestors. The Trask, whose entire evolutionary history revolved around avoiding conflict, had begun updating their wills. Even the warlike Turek generals seemed unnerved. One of them turned to his aide. "Send word to our fleet. If the Terrans need an emergency evacuation, we will assist." The aide blinked. "You believe the humans will surrender?" The general swallowed. "No. I believe we may need to extract the Drak'Thal Warlords' corpse before the humans decide to weaponize it." At the center of it all, Ambassador Nathan Cole sat calmly, stirring the last of his coffee. Across from him, Dr. Virex, lead scientist of the Galactic Dominion, was having an existential crisis. "You don't understand," Virex hissed, his mandibles clicking in pure distress. "You cannot defeat him. You must find a way to withdraw." Cole raised an eyebrow. "Why?" Virex gawked. "Because, you idiot, the Drak'Thal are engineered for war. Their physiology alone makes them unstoppable. Do you even realize what you've done?" Cole leaned back, exhaling. "All right, Professor Doom and Gloom. Let's hear it." Virex slammed his datapad onto the table, activating a holographic projection of Korgath's biological profile. "Look at this," Virex snapped, zooming in on the warlord's anatomy. Korgath stands at 3.8 meters, twice your height. His exoskeleton is reinforced bioarmor, capable of withstanding high-caliber plasma rounds. He has redundant nervous systems, meaning even a fatal injury won't immediately incapacitate him. His musculature is so dense that a full-grown Drak'Thal can crush steel with their bare hands. Cole whistled. "Sounds like a fun Friday night." Virex looked physically ill. "Do you know how many species have accepted a Drak'Thal combat challenge?" Cole took a slow sip of coffee. "Enlighten me." Virex gritted his mandibles. 63. "And how many survived?" Virex's voice dropped to a whisper. "None." Silence. The chamber watched with bated breath, waiting for the human to finally comprehend the severity of the situation. Cole nodded. Then he grinned. "So you're saying I've got a shot?" Virex physically recoiled. The pre-fight preparations. Despite the entire Galactic Council's protests, the challenge was officially sanctioned. Once a Drak'Thal combat duel was issued, it could not be revoked. A time and location were chosen. Arena Prime, a planet-sized battlefield used for only the most high-profile blood duels. A neutral war zone, where warriors fought before the entire Dominion. Cole was granted 24 hours to prepare. Instead, he took a nap, while his fellow Terrans panicked, while generals scrambled to analyze Drak'Thal combat footage and strategists drafted emergency extraction plans. Cole slept like a baby. Virex, meanwhile, did not. The scientists spent the night cross-referencing every recorded battle of the Drak'Thal, compiling every tactical analysis he could find, running thousands of simulations, only to arrive at the same horrifying conclusion. The human would die. The day of reckoning. The entire galaxy tuned in to witness the execution. Billions of viewers across thousands of star systems watched as Cole stepped into the arena, clad in nothing but a reinforced combat suit and his own infuriating confidence. On the other side, Korgath emerged. The warlord's bioplated armor gleamed under the twin suns, his warblade nearly as long as Cole was tall. As the announcer declared the battle's commencement, Virex felt a deep, sinking dread. This was it. The human was going to die. Then, Cole spoke, loud enough for the entire audience to hear. "All right, big guy. Before we get started, I gotta ask." Korgath growled, gripping his weapon. "You wish to beg for your life?" Cole smirked. "Nah, just wondering. Do you know what a rope-a-dope is?" Silence. Confusion rippled through the spectators. The warlord's mandibles clicked. "I do not care for your meaningless words, human. Prepare to." Then he charged. A thunderous boom shook the arena as Korgath lunged, his warblade carving a path through the air with enough force to level a building. Virex closed his eyes. It was over. Then, Cole dodged. The warlord's strike missed by inches, carving a deep trench into the ground. Cole, grinning like a lunatic, casually adjusted his footing. "Okay, so that's a yes." Korgath's eyes flashed with fury as he swung again, faster than a missile, stronger than a meteor impact. And again, Cole slipped just out of reach. Left, right, duck, weave. The audience stared in disbelief. Virex's brain short-circuited. Korgath was missing. And not just missing, he was getting slower. The warlord's breaths grew heavier, his swings more sluggish. Cole, perfectly untouched, smirked. "Man, you're getting tired already. We just started." It was at that moment the galaxy realized. Nathan Cole wasn't fighting Korgath. He was playing with him. The art of making a monster look foolish. For the first time in recorded history, a Drak'Thal warlord swung and missed, not once, Not twice, but repeatedly. And the entire galaxy was watching. Millions of species across the Dominion, glued to their screens. Soldiers, politicians, warlords, and scholars alike stared, unable to comprehend what was happening. A human was dodging Kor'gath the Unyielding. The same Kor'gath who had shattered titanium war mechs with his bare hands. The same Kor'gath who had once waded through an army of cybernetic warriors and walked out without a scratch. And yet, before their eyes, he was swinging at empty air. The impossible dance. Nathan Cole, Terran ambassador and apparent professional menace to the Galactic Order, moved like he was dancing through a bar fight. Kor'gath lunged. Cole leaned back. A blade swung low. Cole hopped over it. The warlord brought his full weight down, cratering the ground where Cole had stood. But the human was already gone. The warlord's breathing grew heavier. Not because he was out of shape. Kor'gath's species didn't tire easily. No, this was something worse. He was getting frustrated. And Cole knew it. Damn, the human whistled, hands on his hips, standing several feet away, untouched. You sure you're the big bad everyone says you are? 'Cause I feel like I'm fighting a drunk uncle at Thanksgiving. The entire arena fell silent. The announcer, a dignified four-armed Silari who had commentated hundreds of blood duels, forgot how to speak. The camera zoomed in on Kor'gath's expression. His mandibles twitched, his eyes blazed, his breath came in short, rapid bursts. He was not just angry. He was humiliated. Kor'gath roared and charged again. Cole sidestepped effortlessly. The audience, who had spent the entire fight waiting for the human to be torn apart, were now leaning forward, their expressions shifting from shock to curiosity. The strategy of madness. High above the battlefield, in the Galactic Council's VIP observation chamber, Dr. Virex was having a meltdown. The scientist gripped the railing, his secondary hearts pounding in pure disbelief. This isn't possible, he sputtered. Next to him, Admiral Kasich, a hardened military veteran of the Silari fleet, stared in absolute fascination. No, Kasich muttered, his forehand steepled. It's not just possible. It's genius. Virex whipped around. Genius. He's just dodging like a lunatic. That's not a strategy. Kasich's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. No, doctor. That's psychology. Virex froze. Kasich nodded toward the battlefield. Watch Kor'gath. Look at him. Virex did. And then he saw it. Kor'gath was no longer fighting like a warlord. He was fighting like an animal backed into a corner. Wild swings, poor form, sloppy attacks. A warrior built on unshakable confidence was now second-guessing every move. The mighty warlord was unraveling. Cole isn't trying to beat him in strength, Kasich said quietly. He's making him beat himself. Humiliating a living weapon. Kor'gath swung again. Cole ducked. This time, he didn't just dodge. He slapped Kor'gath on the back of the head as he passed. A horrified gasp swept through the audience. A Drak'Thal Warlord had never been disrespected in such a way. Kor'gath stumbled forward, blinking, as if his own brain couldn't comprehend what had just happened. Cole grinned. What's the matter, big guy? Tired. The warlord let out a guttural snarl and swung with every ounce of rage in his body. Cole, effortlessly calm, took a single step back. The warblade sliced through the air, inches from his face, and buried itself into the ground. Deep. Kor'gath yanked at it. It didn't move. The warlord froze. The moment his fingers tightened on the hilt, Cole moved. Lightning fast. With one precise kick to Kor'gath's wrist, the warblade ripped from his grasp. The audience erupted. For the first time in his life, Kor'gath was unarmed. The killing blow that never came. The warlord staggered back, staring at his now empty hands. It was a nightmare scenario, the kind of thing warriors of his kind never even considered possible. Nathan Cole took a slow step forward. You know, Cole mused, cracking his knuckles. "Where I come from, we have a saying." Kor'gath snarled, claws flexing. "Your words mean nothing, human." Cole grinned wider. "Float like a butterfly. Sting like a bee." Then, he punched Kor'gath in the face. Hard. The crowd lost their minds. Virex nearly fainted. Kor'gath stumbled back, his enormous frame rocked by the impact. For a moment, he just stood there, breathing heavily, processing. Then, slowly, he looked at Cole. And he laughed. A deep, rumbling chuckle at first, then a booming roar of genuine amusement. The entire arena fell into stunned silence. Kor'gath grinned, revealing rows of razor-sharp fangs. "You are insane." Cole smirked. "You're just figuring that out now." The warlord shook his head, still grinning. Then, before the announcer could even declare a winner, Kor'gath slammed his fist to his chest in a warrior's salute. "I yield. The galaxy shatters." The words rippled across the cosmos. Every screen, every broadcast station, every intergalactic news outlet froze in absolute shock. Kor'gath, the unyielding, champion of the Drak'Thal Dominion, had just surrendered to a human. For the first time in thousands of years, the Drak'Thal had lost. And worse, they were happy about it. As the arena erupted into chaos, as journalists scrambled, as world leaders panicked, Kor'gath walked up to Cole. "You," the warlord rumbled, "are the greatest warrior I have ever faced." Cole grinned. "Cool. So about that trade deal." Virex collapsed into a chair, emotionally destroyed. And across the galaxy, a terrifying realization took hold. The humans weren't just survivors. They were something far worse. They were having fun.